When the crowd thinned, he whispered, "Thank you for playing along." My smile froze halfway. Playing along. But he was already looking toward the door she'd gone through. My mind short-circuited. Something cracked quietly inside me. Not dramatic, just a line across the glass of my chest. He turned back, noticing too late. "You know I didn't mean." I said, "It's fine." It was. I left before dessert. The rain outside matched the taste in my throat. Every step echoed the same sentence. "Hey, used you. Hey, used you. Hey, used you." I used to believe attention meant affection. Maybe that's where I went wrong. In this world, an omega's scent is both an invitation and a curse. People smell you before they see you. They decide who you are before you even speak. Maybe that's why, the first time Aiden looked my way, I mistook curiosity for care. Or maybe because I had always had secret admiration for him. I met him finally on a Monday morning. The kind of morning that tasted like burnt coffee and deadlines. It was one of the usual morning routines for a design intern in a big firm. But today the air around the office seems different. The boss, whom everyone both feared and admired, is coming back after a long business trip outside the country. This is my second month interning at the Voss conglomerate. Yet I have only heard stories of our S-Class Alpha boss. Just from the tailies I have heard so far. I was already fantasizing about my first meeting with him. You can say that my heart was like a musk toast just by hearing about him. Just when thoughts trailed off on the color scheme to use for the design that was glaring at me across my desktop screen, the air suddenly stilled, and a scent I haven't perceived before in the office hit me hard and strong. An alpha pheromone. The kind that commands nothing but absolute respect. Immediately I looked up, I saw him. Aiden Voss, Regional Director of the Voss conglomerate. Every omega in the department straightened when he walked by. Fighting for a chance to be noticed, I tried to pretend that my heart wasn't beating in an unhealthy manner for him. He was tall, over 6'3", his gait poised and controlled. And what I call a perfectly sculpted face that screams beautiful. He was the kind of alpha who didn't need to announce his rank. The air did it for him. He didn't look at me the first week. Not once. I told myself that maybe that was a good thing. I'd come to the firm to design, not to survive someone's pheromones. Still, when he finally said my name that fateful day, just Lior, I forgot how to breathe. He called me to his office. Glass walls, silver desk, one window open just enough for wind to slip through. The air filled with a rich smell of his pheromones, making my heart go weak. I had cursed under my breath for nearly losing composure just from a faint scent of his pheromone. "Your presentation," he said, voice low, magnetic, was clean, confident. "Good job." Compliments from alphas like him, especially one whom I have been having some wet dreams of, came like an invisible wave crashing down heavily on me. My heart felt especially sweet with something I can't name. For once I felt noticed. Don't get me wrong, I'm pretty handsome myself. So handsome that I had been mistaken as a beautiful female before. Yet I feel that is the only redeeming thing about an omega of the lowest rank like me. I have been criticized so much that I have withdrawn myself from the crowd, away from prying eye, afraid I would always be reminded of how low my birth was, or how unfit I am to be matched with a good alpha. I stood there frozen and probably daydreaming. When I finally came back to myself, I saw him looking at me with searching gaze. Not the type of disgusting ones I was used to. I blushed hard from embarrassment. "Thank you," I barely whispered, grateful that I had my suppressant on. Else, my pheromone would be spiraling out of control, because of my unstable emotions. I didn't know how I managed to get home that day. Later, lying in bed that night, I replayed his laugh, his tone, the way his eyes seemed to soften only for me. I didn't know then that softness could be a strategy. I was barely able to get a good sleep. That should have been the end. But it never is. After that day, he noticed things. My scent when I was nervous. The way I chewed my pen when I couldn't solve a layout. He started bringing coffee, black, no sugar, the way I liked it. Little gestures that meant everything to someone who'd been invisible too long. Colleagues whispered. Omega Lior caught the boss's eye. Careful, he's marking territory. I laughed it off, but part of me liked the sound of belonging. Belonging is dangerous when it isn't real. 2 weeks later, I saw her. Tall, graceful, wearing Aiden's scent like memory. His ex-mate. They spoke in low tones near the elevator. His shoulders softened when she smiled. Mine tightened. That night, he lingered by my desk long after everyone left. You shouldn't stay late, he said. I asked why. Are you worried about me? He smirked, half amusement, half challenge. Maybe I am. For a second, I believed him. Our conversations multiplied. Days blurred. Texts turned to late calls. Late calls turned to coffee at dawn. Every time we met, he pulled me a little closer, just enough to make me hope, heart jittering, face flushed crimson, but never enough to promise. I told myself I didn't need a label, that being noticed and close to him was enough. That maybe this was what love and freedom looked like. What I didn't know was that freedom without clarity is just quiet confusion. One night he'd invited me over. His apartment was dim, music low, like the world had pressed pause. We laughed about something unimportant, and then silence filled the space between words. He looked at me, long searching. And before I could think, he kissed me. Soft, certain. The kind of kiss that feels like a promise even when it is. I didn't ask what it meant. I just let the night carry us, consumed by the fiery desire between us. Because sometimes believing feels easier than knowing. When morning came, sunlight drew thin lines across the floor. He was already awake, leaning on the counter, scrolling through his phone. No smile, no words. Just there but distant. Last night was fun, he said finally, looking up from his phone. I nodded, though it wasn't the word I'd have chosen. Fun is temporary. I wanted something that stayed, something more. But I swallowed the silent protest, threatening to destroy everything. After I freshened up and had the breakfast he had ordered for me, he walked me to the door. When his hand brushed mine, I felt the ghost of the warmth that had filled the night. And then nothing. For days after, I waited. For a text, a call, anything that would tell me. I hadn't imagined the fiery passion from the night he whispered sweet nothing to me, while filling me with himself. But nothing. It was as though whatever had happened was a mirage, a mistake. I had wept silently, looked longingly at him when he steps into the office. But he had suddenly grown distant. He no longer smiled at me the way he did before the night. He only ever talked about work with me in a calm, unfeeling tone at work. And after work, he would leave before I got the chance to talk to him. The distance and coldness was unnerving and unbearable. At least, I needed to know where I stand in all this. If I was an impulse in a moment of weakness to him. Yet nothing. Only silence. One evening, during a company dinner, she arrived again. Same ex-mate. Eyes flicking from him to me, reading the air. And suddenly, Aiden's hand rested lightly on my shoulder. Possessive, public. Everyone noticed. Especially her. The rest of the night blurred. Laughter too loud. Her leaving early. his grip tightening every time someone looked at me. When the crowd thinned, he whispered, "Thank you for playing along." My smile froze halfway. Playing along. But he was already looking toward the door she'd gone through. My mind short-circuited. Something cracked quietly inside me. Not dramatic, just a line across the glass of my chest. He turned back, noticing too late. "You know I didn't mean." I said, "It's fine." It was. I left before dessert. The rain outside matched the taste in my throat. Every step echoed the same sentence. "Hey, used you. Hey, used you. Hey, used you." At the curb, a car slowed beside me. Window down. A quiet voice, "You shouldn't walk alone this late." An unfamiliar alpha. Dark eyes, calm, soothing scent. He didn't stare, didn't push, just waited. For once, someone's presence didn't weigh on my skin. I almost said no. Then the thunder answered for me. I opened the door and stepped inside. That was the night I met Ciel. The stranger who didn't know my name, but somehow knew I was breaking. He drove in silence. City lights slid across the windshield like small truths I couldn't say. "Rough night?" he asked. I nodded. He didn't ask why. He didn't need to. For the first time in months, I exhaled without fear of who might smell it. Later, when I'd replay this night, I'd realize that's when everything shifted. Not when Aiden touched me in public, but when Ciel looked at me and didn't see a tool, a trophy, or a scent. He just saw me. Morning came too early. My room still smelled like rain and regret. I stared at my reflection, the tired Omega who believed a few smiles could mean love. I should have known better. But the truth is, we all want to be chosen, even if it's temporary. At work, Aiden was distant. Emails, curt replies, a polite nod in the hallway. It was as if nothing had happened. Except it had. My heart had noticed. My scent had shifted. Everyone could smell confusion. Omegas don't get to hide emotion. Our bodies confess what our mouths can't. By lunch, I was ready to disappear. But the elevator doors opened, and there he was. Ciel. Same calm scent. Same unbothered smile. He worked in tech support, badge clipped sideways. He said, "You dropped this last night." A forgotten umbrella, neatly folded. I thanked him. He shrugged. "You looked like you needed it more than I did." His tone carried no expectation. That's rare. So rare it hurts. We started crossing paths after that. Break room, hallway, late evenings by the vending machine. He never asked about Aiden. Never asked why an Omega from design looked like he hadn't slept in days. He just talked about small things. Music, rain, the silence between people. It's strange how healing never looks dramatic. Sometimes it's a quiet voice saying, "You okay?" And you realizing, maybe this time you are. Maybe not fully, but more than before. Aiden called me into his office that Friday. His eyes unreadable. "You've been distracted," he said. I smiled, thin and professional. "Just focusing on work." He frowned, as if my calm unsettled him. He leaned forward. "Lior, about that night." I cut him off. "It's fine, you don't owe me an apology." But he looked frustrated, as if he wanted to still matter. He said softly, "You weren't supposed to get hurt." I replied, "Then maybe you shouldn't have used me." Silence. The kind that stretches and burns. His pheromones flickered, uncertain. Then he said the thing that broke what was left of my illusions. "She's coming back, we're trying again." It was like hearing a door slam that I didn't realize I'd been holding open. I nodded, smiled, walked out. Simple, clean, final. But my heart stayed behind, echoing in that glass office. I found Ciel by the parking lot later that day. He was eating noodles from a cup, watching the rain. He looked up, long day. I just said, you could say that. He offered a bite. I laughed, the kind that surprises even you. Warmth spread, small and stubborn. We talked until the rain stopped. About nothing important. And yet everything felt lighter. He didn't touch me. Didn't crowd me. Just existed beside me, like steady air after a storm. That night, I realized I'd stopped checking my phone for Aiden's messages. Days turned into weeks. My scent steadied. My smile returned unforced. Colleagues whispered again, but this time I didn't care. Healing isn't dramatic. It's quiet, almost invisible. Like frost melting from glass. One evening, as we locked up, Ciel said, "You ever notice how everyone wants to be seen, but no one looks long enough?" I said, "Yeah, I used to think being seen meant being wanted." He looked at me, eyes soft. "And now?" I breathed out slowly. "Now I think being seen means being understood." He smiled, gentle, knowing. The kind of smile that doesn't promise forever, but quietly says you're safe now. Healing isn't linear. Some mornings I woke up certain I was free. Other nights, one memory pulled me back under. The sound of Aiden's voice in a meeting. The smell of his cologne in the corridor. Ghosts linger in scent longer than they do in memory. Ciel noticed before I said anything. He had this quiet way of asking without words. A raised eyebrow, a tilted head. Sometimes just handing me coffee and sitting beside me until breathing felt normal again. No pity, just presence. We started walking home together. Same route, same silence. The world shrank to our footsteps and the rhythm of rain gutters. He point out tiny things, a cat sleeping on a ledge, the pattern of cracks on the wall. I began to notice too. Maybe noticing was the first step of coming back to life. One night he asked, "Do you ever miss him?" I didn't answer immediately. The truth felt heavier than words. Finally I said, "I miss the version of me who believed he cared." Ciel just nodded slow. Understanding without judgment. Sometimes we'd end up at a tiny cafe near the river. He'd talk about old films. I'd listen, tracing the rim of my cup, realizing I'd stopped comparing every alpha's voice to Aiden. That was new. At work, the tension faded. Aiden was always polite, now distant but watchful. Once he stopped me near the elevator. "You look happy." I said, "I am." He opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. That silence felt like closure. Weeks passed. Ciel's friendship became rhythm, text in the morning, dinner at night. I never called it love. Not yet. But my heart had started speaking his name when it felt safe. One weekend, he invited me to a small concert. Local band, dim lights, laughter between songs. When the crowd swayed, his hand brushed mine. He didn't pull away. Neither did I. Simple, steady, enough. After the show, we walked home through drizzle. He said quietly, "Funny thing about hearts, they remember even when you tell them to forget." I smiled. Maybe remembering isn't the problem. Maybe it's learning not to bleed from it anymore. He chuckled soft. That sounds like healing to me. When we reached my door, he hesitated. "Can I ask something?" I nodded. He looked at me carefully. "When you finally stop hurting, will you still want me around?" My breath caught. No one had ever asked to stay after the pain ended. I said, "If I'm still standing when this is over, it's because you helped me get there. So yes, I want you around." He smiled small, real. And in that moment, something fragile became certain. He didn't kiss me. He just pressed his forehead lightly against mine. No claim, no mark, just peace. And for the first time, I understood the difference between being wanted and being chosen. Later, lying in bed, I thought about how love sometimes begins quietly. Not with fire, but with gentle light that refuses to fade. Ciel was that light. And I wasn't afraid of the dawn anymore. Peace never lasts as long as you hope. It's not the world's fault. It's just how stories work. Something always circles back. For me, it was Aiden. He showed up one Monday morning. Different suits, same presence. I heard people whisper. The ex-maid had left again, but I didn't care to listen. Rumors travel faster than truth in our world. When I saw him by the elevators, I thought my pulse would betray me. But it didn't. It just slowed. Lior, he said. My name still carried weight in his mouth. I turned calm, distant. Yes, director. The title hurt him more than any sentence could. He smiled faintly. Still formal, huh? A week later, Aiden called. His name flashed on my screen like a memory refusing to die. I hesitated, then answered. His voice was too casual, yet deep with something unusual. He wanted to talk. Part of me wanted closure. Part of me wanted proof that I no longer needed him. So I met him. Coffee, neutral ground, old habits. I agreed, because closure sometimes wears the disguise of curiosity. He looked the same, confident, composed, but his eyes were dull. A pain so distinct to notice. We sat across from each other. Steam rose, eyes avoided. And then, I made a mistake, he said. I looked up slowly. He continued, she left again. I thought I loved her, but... I stopped him. Don't finish that sentence. He blinked, surprised. Why not? Because it sounds like you're about to make me your next mistake. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was freeing. He leaned back. You've changed. I smiled slightly. No, I just stopped mistaking attention for affection. When he reached for my hand, I pulled back gently. I hope you find what you're looking for, Aiden, just not in me. For the first time, his smile faltered. And mine began. We parted without promises. He looked smaller somehow. Like regret had finally found him. Walking out of that cafe. Outside, the air felt lighter. Freedom has no sound, but it feels like exhaling after holding your breath too long. I realized closure doesn't come when they apologize. It comes when you no longer need them to. That evening, Ciel found me by the river. He didn't ask what happened. He just handed me a hot drink and sat down beside me. We watched the water move. Soft ripples reflecting distant light. After a while, I said quietly. He came back. Ciel didn't flinch. He just said, and. I told him no. He smiled, not proud, not surprised. Just relieved. Like he'd been waiting for me to choose peace over history. Was it hard? He asked. I thought for a second. Yes, but not because I still loved him. Because I used to. Ciel nodded. That's what makes you human. We sat there until the sky turned violet. Somewhere in the distance, laughter echoed. Life continues as it should. For the first time, the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Ciel reached over, fingers brushing mine. Do you ever wonder, he murmured, how something that started with pain could end in peace? I smiled softly. Maybe that's how we know it was real. Even the hurt mattered. When he finally took my hand, I didn't flinch. Didn't think about what it meant. It just felt right. 2 steady heartbeats sinking quietly beneath the sound of rain. Peace comes quietly. No grand announcement. No music swelling behind you. Just the gentle realization that you're not waiting for someone to hurt you anymore. He smiled, small, certain, and leaned in for a kiss. It was soft at first, then urgent, demanding as though he was venting the pent-up repressed emotion. I felt peace, loved, wanted, genuinely at that moment. When it finally ended, I looked at him with intense desire. I wanted to thank him for being there through my healing. But as I listened to our heart beat in sync, I realized that it was not needed. My voice came out softer than I intended. Please stay. He smiled and pulled me into a warm hug. I wasn't planning on going anywhere forever. He whispered softly into my ears. Months passed like steady waves. Work became routine again. People stopped whispering. Aiden's name faded from the air like an old scent finally washed away. And Ciel. He became the constant I didn't know I needed. He wasn't perfect. He left socks everywhere. He hummed off-key when he coded. He always forgot his lunch. But his flaws made the world feel real again. I'd spent too long chasing perfection that only bruised me. One night he cooked. Badly. The pasta was overdone, the sauce too salty. He looked embarrassed, waiting for my reaction. I just laughed until my stomach hurt. That's when it hit me. This was happiness. Not fireworks, not obsession. Just laughter over ruined dinner. After we cleaned up, we sat by the window. The city pulsed quietly below. He said, "Do you ever think about what comes next?" I turned to him. "No, I think about now." He smiled a little sad. I could get used to that. He reached for my hand. Our fingers intertwined naturally, like they'd always known how. No sparks, no marks, no pheromones fighting for dominance. Just warmth. Real human. Sometimes I still think about Aiden. Not with pain. Just acknowledgement. He was a lesson. Ciel was the reward for surviving it. I don't hate him anymore. I just hope he learns what I did. That love isn't about who looks at you first, but who stays when everyone else turns away. Ciel once said, "Forever isn't a promise, it's a choice you keep making." I believe him. Every morning, when he hands me burnt toast and a crooked smile, I choose him again. And again. And again. Life isn't perfect now. We still argue. We still misunderstand. But the difference is, we listen. We learn. We come back. That's what forever looks like. Sometimes I wake before him. I watch the light spill over his face. And I think, maybe love isn't about being claimed. Maybe it's about finally finding a place where you can just exist. I used to believe attention meant affection. Now I know. Affection is silence shared between heartbeats, peace in another's breathing, and the quiet certainty that you are no longer alone.